it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I am so excited to be sharing with you guys my second guest design team project for the greeting farm. And I made this card for my nephew who's in his early 20s, living and working in New York City, and he's been studying really hard for grad school exams. So I wanted to remind him to have some fun, dating, and enjoying New York City life. So I thought I would make him this accordion fold card using Collin, who's from the Ever After set. And just so you guys know, these images from the bigger collections like this are a little bit smaller than the individual stamps. So what I did was I stamped him out, then I scanned him into my computer and printed that out so that he could be the same size, coordinating with these little princesses. This is Princess Anya 2, Princess Anya 3, and Princess Anya 4. And those ladies are set up as Bachelorette number 1, number 2, and number 3. So I use this Sizzix Album Accordion Flip 3D die to create the structure of this card. And I used papers from the Doodlebug 6x6 Lovebirds set, the American Crafts Spring collection, as well as the Pebbles Sunnyside collection. I colored up all the images with my Copic markers, and I'm going to be sharing with you guys the paper piecing process to show you guys how to paper piece so that it's a little bit more realistic, more three-dimensional, by doing some simple shading with Copic markers. To get the look of the dating game stage, I used the Diamond Dies Daisy Flowers die set, and I also printed off my computer the dating game logo, and I changed the colors around using a free software program called paint.net. I just layered that up on little scraps of pattern paper from those paper pads that I shared with you, and then I just decorated each panel with the daisies using the pattern paper that matches each little princess's dress for the flowers in that panel. So I hope you guys enjoy the process video. This is Princess Anya 2, and I'm inking her up with some Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I am using a Fiskars Easy Press to get a good impression on Georgia Pacific premium cardstock that you can pick up at Walmart or on Amazon. But this time I'm going to be stamping it out on some pretty floral pattern paper. And I'm using a scrap piece of paper so that I don't use more of the pattern paper than I need. I just need the bottom portion where her little dress is to be stamped out. And as you can see, I'm going to be stamping it out for a third time on a pale pink polka dot pattern paper, so that I can do her underdress with that lighter pattern. This is Princess Anya 3, and I'm going to be doing the same process again with her. I'm inking her up really well with Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I'm stamping her out onto the Georgia Pacific paper. And I'm using this ink particularly because I'm going to be doing some Copic shading even on the paper piecing on this pattern paper. So I don't want to use an ink that is not Copic friendly. I'm stamping out the dress again with that pale pink polka dot pattern paper. Say that 5 times fast. And I'm again just using a scrap piece of paper so that I don't waste more of the pattern paper or my white cardstock, inadvertently stamping more than I need to of the image. And I do this one last time with Princess Anya 4. I'm not going to be showing you my conversion of Collin because a lot of that was done on my computer, but needless to say, I did the same stamping. I scanned it in, which is a little bit different, and then resized it before I did the Copic coloring and paper piecing on Collin. Here I'm back to stamping the dress part of Princess Anya 4 onto this beautiful floral paper. And because the pattern paper takes the ink a little bit differently, I'm trying to make sure that I get a really good, strong impression, letting the stamp sit on top of the pattern paper for a little bit longer than you might with regular cardstock. Now I'm using a pale blue polka dot pattern paper for the underskirt for Princess Anya 4. A lot of people do paper piecing just by stamping out the image again on pattern paper, cutting it out and adhering it onto the image. But I want to share with you guys a little tip for adding extra dimension and realism. All you need is a couple of Copic markers in the light gray tones. I'm using C1 and C3 to add that extra dimension and realism. It really adds a 3D look, and it's so easy. The greeting farm images have little lines where it indicates the folds, but even without those, it's really easy just to look at the image, and where there are little indentations, just go in and put a quick little stroke or two to add that little depth of shadow. On this more subtle pattern paper, I think you'll be able to see how easy it is to add just a few strokes here and there to add the shading that lends that 3D look. I'm just using the C1 and C3 again to add some depth of shadow where the folds of the fabric would be, or where the shadows might be cast. If a sleeve is puffy, the underside would get a little bit of shadow, where the underskirt has the shadow of the top skirt, or where the folds might be toward the bottom of the skirt. You just add a few flicks and voila, it's got so much more dimension. Now it's time for some fussy cutting. I'm using a Fiskars spring-loaded scissors, which I think are great for people with arthritis like me. I'm turning the paper, as you can see, more so than turning the scissors, and I think that gives a really clean cut. But even if your cutting is not super smooth, don't worry, because the next step will cover up a myriad of flaws in your fussy cutting. One of the nice things about fussy cutting an image out that you're going to be paper piecing is that you don't have to be super careful about the areas that are going to be paper pieced. You can just cut kind of straight across, so long as there's a place to glue on the paper pieced top parts on top of the base image. So here I'm just fussy cutting around the little girl's hair, her little crown, but if you'll notice at the bottom there along her dress, I just kind of cut almost in an arch, but pretty loosely across, not worrying about the edges of her dress, because that's all going to get covered up by the paper pieced dress, top dress, and underskirt. This next part is where those less than perfectly smooth fussy cutting edges get covered up. I'm taking a black Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pen in a brushed tip and just inking around all the edges of those fussy cut pieces. Now, I know this takes a little bit of time, and for small little pieces like this, it might seem like I'm going overboard, but really doing this gives such a nice finished edge to all your paper piecing. You don't see that white edge of the paper, and everything looks like it's perfectly fitted and cohesive. Here I'm adding some wet glue. I'm using my favorite wet glue, which is Art Glitter Glue, and it dries clear, and I've got a fine tip nozzle on the end of it so that I can get into the tiniest of places. I'm gluing in the underskirt first, then I'm putting up the top dress right up against the underskirt, and now I'm going to add the little puff sleeves that are made of the same pattern paper as the underskirt, and she's got a really cute outfit. I think adding the shadows where the folds of her fabric would be and finishing off the edges of the paper pieced pieces with black ink really gives her a great three-dimensional finished look. To add a little sparkle, I'm adding champagne gold stickles to her crown, and I'm also going to add little rhinestone gems to her ears so they can be little diamond earrings. Now, I don't want to be totally repetitive, but I know some people like to see processes more than once. So I'm going to show you the paper piecing for Princess Anya 2, which is this little cutie here. I go through the same steps. Using C1 and C3 for some shading, I'm adding folds to that underskirt you can see there where there aren't even little lines drawn in on the stamp, but it's really easy. You just follow where there might be little indentations at the bottom of the skirt and just swoosh up a little shadow line. And I'm doing the same thing on this floral paper, but it's harder to see because of all of that pattern in that paper. Now I'm just fussy cutting around the outside or top layer of the dress. And it's very straightforward. I'm trying to cut down the edges of the stamped image without cutting away the line. If you do cut away the line, it's not a fatal flaw or anything. You just need to kind of reestablish the line with a black marker. Now you'll see a little tricky part here. I could have cut straight across, connecting along the edge of the sleeve, but I decided I wanted it to be a more finished fussy cutting, so I'm using an X-Acto knife to cut out her little hands. As you can see, it's kind of surrounded by the dress and her sleeve in the image, so I'm taking an X-Acto knife and just using the tip of that blade, and it really helps if you have a sharp X-Acto blade. So please remember to replace those blades periodically. Don't try and use a dull blade. It really makes it so much more difficult. Now I'm cutting out the underskirt, and I decide to keep the petticoat attached to the underskirt. You can see the little edge at the bottom there, because I'm going to use a white jelly roll pen to add a slightly different look to that petticoat. Now I'm fussy cutting out the image, and you can see all along the bottom there, I didn't really worry about staying outside the lines of that dress because all of that's going to be covered up with the paper piecing. I am careful about fussy cutting the rest of the image, like the crown and the hair, but these Greeting Farm images are really easy to fussy cut out because they've got really clean, dark lines around the edges. Again, I'm inking the edges of the fussy cut pieces, taking care to go really into all those tiny little crevices, those nooks and crannies, so that none of the white edge of the paper is showing. And I'm holding it in my left hand while I take the marker in my right hand. I'm propping up my markered hand with my pinky against the other hand. And so even if my hand with the marker slips, it won't get on the front or the pretty side of these paper pieces. And here you'll see how I go about inking the edges of that inside cutout. That's where the hands will be showing through. And if you just take the marker to the back side like that, all the edges get colored. Now I'm putting some wet glue on the front, and I am adhering the underskirt as well as the top dress. You'll see in the finished card that I add cranberry and champagne stickles to her crown, some rhinestone gems for earrings, and some white dots with a jelly roll pen for a lacy look. I hope this paper piecing process video was helpful to you, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And now it's time for a giveaway. The Greeting Farm was super generous and gave me this Cheeky Beach stamp to give away to one of my viewers, and I'm tossing in a couple of extra goodies from my stash. All you have to do to enter is to tell me something positive about the Greeting Farm and tell me what country you're in. I'll pick a winner in a week's time. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful crafty day.